way I always look at it, whether it's a county legislative race or a city council race that I'm running, or whether it's this race for governor, it boils down to math. There's 19 million people in the state, only 10 million of them are registered to vote. So right away you've got 9 million people whose votes don't count because they're not registered. And of that 9 million people, if you look at the past several gubernatorial elections, 2010, 2006, 2004, around 5 million people vote. So you just went from 19 million people to 10 million people to 5 million people, and you only have to win 50% plus one of the people that vote. So you only got to win 2.5 million people. If we are able to do our part in Broome County, and in Albany they do their part, in New York City they do their part, in Westchester they do their part, in Buffalo and Rochester, we can win. I mean, it's not nearly as daunting as it seems when you first think about 19 million people. How do we do it? But 2.5 million, again, it's not that far out of reach when you really think about trying to connect with that many people.
Greg, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just curious about the NRA. Are they sponsoring or?
We got, the NRA gave out grades last week. Rob Astorino, A. Chris Moss, A. Andrew Cuomo, F. Kathy Hochul, D. But we got to get that word out there because we have that substance now. We have the grades, but we need to spread that word. And again, that's something we're.
But is the NRA helping to disseminate that information, to let their members know what those grades that you just talked about?
I wish they would do a mailer or something like that to all their members. I don't know if that's going to happen, but we're pushing for it. I mean, they should. Again, if Cuomo wants to be president, he passed the SAFE Act as governor of New York State if he runs for president in 2016, which is certainly his plan. He's going to try and do the same thing across the nation. And if I were the NRA, I would certainly want to try and stop him now. Stop him now.
Yeah, right. Michael?
Sorry that I got here a little bit late.
No problem.
You may have covered some of the items I want to go over. One of the questions I have is in reference to Governor Cuomo's Startup New York. You're familiar with the program.
Yeah.
Recently, in Binghamton alone, there was a big celebration, or moderate celebration, in June, late June, early July, that Startup New York was being effective, and I believe the governor's quote was, "This is a game-changing action for the southern tier of New York." What he was referring to were the creation of, or rather, the addition of 5 businesses to the Binghamton southern tier area for a total of 80 jobs, for giving initially $2.4 million worth of revenue coming in, with 10 years of no taxes on these 80 jobs.
Yep.
This area also, without fanfare this time, lost Pepsi. The Pepsi bottling company's storage facilities, which took out 74 jobs, which gave us a grand net total of 6 jobs gained. At the same time, the unemployment rate in Binghamton is 0.2% higher than the entire state of New York and is higher than the national average. How does Mr. Astorino, 1, plan to address that issue for communities like Binghamton and others? 2, how are you facing off against Governor Cuomo on a program that he, again, quote, calls a game changer, which would affect, assuming that Pepsi stayed, would have had a net effect of 0.03% improvement in the unemployment rate for the Binghamton area, and an infinitesimal amount for New York State? How do you answer this?
So you forgot the most heinous part to me is the fact that he spent $250 million of our money, taxpayer money, on these bogus commercials saying that everything's great and rosy in New York State. And he's running those all over the country as well as here. He's running them in all other parts of the country because he wants to be the president. And he's running them here because he wants people to think the economy is better than it is. We all know, I mean, like I said, I've lived here my whole life. When I was a kid, everybody's dad worked at IBM. And things were good and rosy. It's not that way now. Yet he spends $200 million to try and convince people that things are rosier than they are. $40 million of which was specific federal aid that was intended and earmarked to help Hurricane Sandy victims downstate, like on Long Island, New York City. What kind of person takes $40 million, not $10, not $20, $40 million that's supposed to help you know, Mrs. Smith whose house blew away in a hurricane or in the superstorm, and instead spends it on TV ads to help his political future. I mean, the whole startup program is a farce. Like you said, the numbers speak for themselves. They'll you know, sell you a bill of goods with the numbers that they quoted, but the numbers you quoted are far closer to what's really happening. You know, the whole program is a farce, and aside from the bad investment of $2.4 million for whether it's 80 jobs or 6 jobs or whatever, it still doesn't address the fundamental thing that's wrong with Startup New York. Is it's the government picking who's winners, who are the winners and who are losers. Because if I have my manufacturing plant here that's right next to a SUNY campus, I get 10 years of no taxes, but if I have it across the street or a block away or a mile away, and I do the same thing, but I'm not attached to a SUNY campus, I don't get the tax breaks. You've got now a winner that the government picked and a loser that the government didn't pick. That's not what this country is about. You know? The whole thing is set up poorly. Yeah,
If I may, I want to go back to the issue because part of the answer we weren't able to get to, or we weren't able to address. Jobs are the #1 issue in New York State, whether it's in the Binghamton Southern Tier community or anywhere else in upstate New York. Is Mr. Astorino, to your knowledge, stating that he is against the Startup New York program?
Yep.
Is he saying he would revamp it or replace it?
Goes out the window. If he becomes governor, out the window.
And what program, what plan, what initiative would he put in place to help move forward new jobs in what is known as the 50th least business-friendly state in the country, the 3rd highest personal tax and or corporate tax in the United States, and one of the worst business communities in the nation?
Yep. So, #1, Startup New York goes out the window because it's, again, government picking winners and losers. We don't need that. Instead, what we do is try and change the entire state to a more business-friendly climate. A couple of ways to do that. One, you reduce the overall tax burden, both business corporate taxes as well as personal taxes. 2, you again find Empire Zones, the regional councils, all these other sub-programs aside from Startup New York that are picking winners and losers, and you toss them too. 3, you provide meaningful mandate relief for local governments so property taxes can go down both for individuals and for businesses. Because Cuomo passed this property tax cap that everybody loves to talk about, but all that does is handcuff local governments, counties or towns or villages, because they're the ones facing the burden of all those costs. And Cuomo promised when he passed the property tax cap that he would provide mandate relief. He hasn't done that. And the way that we would do that in an Astorino-Moss administration would be mainly around Medicaid, because that's the biggest single expense along with education that the state has. So you find all the inadequacies with Medicaid, all the fat, and you trim that, and there's fraud coming out the wazoo in terms of Medicaid. We appoint an investigator general that can really make some impact there, and we start cutting that so that you can reduce the overall tax burden. I mean, instead of government creating programs, we scale it back and we simplify things. The other point Rob likes to make frequently is that there are 750,000 regulations in this state between local government, state government, and so on. We put a freeze on that from day one, so no new regulations go into effect until we analyze those 750,000, and we toss out ones that don't need to be there to, again, simplify what it takes to run a business.
Bijoy, we're gonna let you go because I know you're a poor guy, you've been working hard.
Thank you.
We wanna thank you on behalf of us here, you stopping in.